with indirectly raising the glucose level in the blood and making the patient to suffer from type 2 diabetes. Due to the kidney empty heat, this Majja Dhatu is going to deplete. It's going to deplete the Majja Dhatu. That's why the people who suffer from excess of kidney empty heat, they suffer from poor memory. Myself, Manjunath, so founder and director of Nadifit. We know that in today's artificial intelligence is playing a major role in many industries. We wanted AI to play a major role in the wellness industry also. Keeping that in mind, we started our research in the year 2017. But in the last 2 years, we have done an extensive research that through pulse, through Nadi, how can we address the root cause of any problem? We have done an extensive research, the core research on the pulse diagnosis of Nadipariksha. And in this journey, we have published many research articles, and this research is clinically validated for almost more than 70,000 patient data. And today I'm really excited to share this research. I'm really excited to share this research with you guys. So without wasting much time, let's jump into the session. So in today's agenda, we're going to discuss about the body intelligence. What is this body intelligence? Why we need to give more importance for this body intelligence? And the manual Nadipariksha. What are the problems we face in the manual Nadipariksha? And how this problem can be overcome in the digital Nadipariksha? And VPK analysis, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha analysis or the yin-yang analysis. Is this sufficient for the detailed diagnosis of the body? And what, if not, what are the detailed diagnosis we are doing in Nadifit? And then we are also discussing about organ level of pulse analysis and how the NadiGPT, that's AI platform which we designed, which we developed, how NadiGPT is solving our problem and making the diagnosis easier, and what are the Nadifit features which currently we have in the application, and also the upcoming features which are updating in the near coming days. And I will also share about different case studies here. We have many case studies. So in that I selected few case studies to share with you guys. And about the Nadifit, different components in Nadifit and the different versions what we have in the Nadifit. And finally the conclusion part. And I want to take this question and answer at the last of the end of this webinar. So let's start into the discussion one by one. So the first thing is like body intelligence. Our body is more intelligent than any doctor. Do you agree that? Our body is more intelligent than any doctor. It has a potential to solve any kind of problems. Maybe it is a chronic, maybe it is acute, because God has built like that. It has a potential to solve any kind of problems. But what it needs is that it needs a kind of a gentle push. We need to guide in the right direction so that it cures any kind of disease. When I say gentle push, we should understand the intelligence first before making a push, before giving a direction. We should listen to the body first. What exactly the body is saying? What exactly the cause behind the problem? And I have seen in my 7 years experience journey that people would treat based on understanding the body intelligence will have much higher success rate compared to the people who treat just based on the symptoms. Because the problem is, if a patient comes and he says, I'm suffering from headache, how do we tackle it? How do we find out what is the reason behind the cause? It's very hard to predict. Correct? And if you look into the allopathy, right, in the Western way of diagnosis, if they want to look into the intelligence of the heart, what they do the ECG analysis. If they want to see the activities of the brain, I mean the neural system, they do the EEG analysis. But if you look into the holistic science, means the Eastern way of diagnosis, this our ancestors has given a tool, a very strong diagnosis tool called tongue and pulse diagnosis. And I mean, my personal experience, they're really a topmost diagnosis tool, because using this pulse diagnosis or tongue diagnosis, you're not only diagnosing the physical problems, you can also able to diagnose the emotional problems. So that's very, very important, where allopathy cannot play their role there. So we can also treat many emotional problems. We can also treat many physical problems through this diagnosis tool, I mean tongue and pulse diagnosis. So we have done an extensive research on the Nadipariksha, I mean the pulse diagnosis. And if you look into this holistic science, TCM or Ayurveda, both these literatures gives a complete detailed analysis about the Nadi. If you take a TCM, they'll consider both the hands. In both the hands, they'll try to do an organ level of pulse analysis. It's a kind of a bit depth diagnosis they try to do it here. In Ayurveda, the topmost diagnosis is like the basic level diagnosis they do is the Vata Pitta Kapha analysis. And even Ayurveda also gives a detailed diagnosis system where they have 7 levels of diagnosis. In all these 7 levels of diagnosis, they do Sabdosha analysis, they do Dhatu analysis, they do Chakra analysis. So all this analysis gives a complete picture about the patient body or the disease or the cause behind the problem. And everybody wants to learn this science. Everyone wants to learn this Nadipariksha. But the problem is, this science is really complex science. It's not easy. It's really a complex science. In my personal experience, one should have a strong imagination power, I can say. Because this science is completely a subjective science, where manually he has to feel it, manually has to experience it. We used to learn this science from our gurus, right? We used to attend many webinars, many seminars, and many events to learn this science. After learning for so many days, when we sit in front of the patient, when we hold the nadi, right, there a lot of confusion runs in our mind. And this is completely a subjective method and needs a lot of practice. And one should have, while reading the nadi, our mind should be completely empty. We cannot, give a best diagnosis while reading the nadi by holding a lot of things in our brain, in our mind. It's very hard to predict. So, but when it comes to digital Nadipariksha, so when I say digital means we are going to use some technology here to capture this nadi and display it over a computer screen or a CRO screen, where we can look into these nadi patterns. Correct? When we look into these nadi patterns through our bare eyes, somewhere we'll get a confidence, yes, something diagnosis we can do, because we can observe the change in the nadi. That the confidence we can give, because we can accept it. But all in manual Nadipariksha is about feeling. But in digital Nadipariksha, we can see and we can look into these nadi patterns, and we can put some logic there to understand what exactly the patient problem is through the pulse. And if you look into the anatomy of this radial artery, especially at the wrist region, there is only a single artery which carries the blood due to to and fro action of the heart. Especially I'm talking about the wrist region. There's only a single artery. But what our Vaidyas were doing is that they were holding all the three fingers, the three fingers at three different positions. And they try to identify the characteristics of the different pulse, like Vata pulse or Pitta pulse or Kapha pulse, and placing the three fingers on a single radial artery. On a single artery, they are identifying the three different characteristics of the pulse and three different positions. But when we started this research, initially we thought of going for three different sensors to read the data at three different positions. But what we observed is that we had an internal discussion with the team, and we find that since there is only one artery here, why can't we read the pulse at only one position and try to do the analysis and try to get all this VPK, three dosha analysis, and design a single sensor, design a sensor which takes the pulse at only one position. So we have designed a custom design sensor which takes the pulse at only one position and takes only one pulse, and we try to understand this pulse, all the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, by analyzing only one pulse. And this analysis, we correlated with the manual Nadipariksha with many Vaidyas, and also we correlated with the patient symptoms. And the real breakthrough we got is that it was exactly matching. What analysis we did with the single pulse, the same analysis what the Vaidyas were also saying the same, and it was exactly matching to the patient problems. So that is a real research breakthrough we got, and we have published a paper on this on the medical journal. It's saying that a single pulse diagnosis system, it takes the pulse at only one position and performs a detailed diagnosis. And we tried not only the three dosha, we also tried to extract the organ level also through the single pulse, and it was really matching. It was really a research breakthrough, we can say. And so that is our journey started there. And after getting this VPK analysis from this single pulse, so the problem is this VPK sufficient for the detailed body diagnosis? In TCM, we can call this as yin and yang. So TCM talks about this same theory in terms of yin and yang theory. In Ayurveda, we speak about Vata, Pitta, Kapha. But the question is, how do we address the patient problem by taking Vata, Pitta, Kapha? If you take a scenario, if you take a condition where a patient and a doctor, patient says, I'm suffering from acidity issues. A doctor holds the nadi of the patient and he says, okay, you have excess of pitta, because of that you are facing the acidity. So that is fine, because that conversation is fine, because patient is telling his problem and doctor is correlating the pulse with his problem and is telling the diagnosis. But if you take a relationship between a patient and a computer, what computer takes is that computer takes the nadi of the patient and let's say it performs analysis and it's assumed that it finds out, okay, this person has excess of pitta. And when I ask the computer, okay, what are the possible symptoms the person is suffering? It is going to give n number of problems. Because when I say pitta, there may be many number of problems but the person is suffering. He may be suffering from hair fall issues, he may be suffering from anger, he may be suffering from headache, he may be suffering from sweating issues, he may be suffering from varicose vein issues, he may be suffering from joint pain issues, he may be suffering from IBS issues. How do we exactly say this is what your patient problem is? This is what the problem you're suffering from. This is where the problem is. How do we exactly say this? It's really hard to go very specific to the problem if you do only VPK analysis. I believe VPK is only a top level diagnosis. We need somewhere a detailed level of diagnosis here. So then we thought, no, this data analysis, what we done, it's not sufficient. So keeping with that in mind, we have expanded our research. We try to derive different energy levels from this VPK. We try to derive different energy levels. We call this as energy levels. And these energy levels are very, very important. They play a very vital role in disease diagnosis. For the time being, I'm calling this Pitta as two different categories, as empty heat and damp heat. Or in Ayurveda, we can call it as empty Pitta and damp Pitta. And similarly, the Vata, we call it as empty Vata or damp Vata. And similarly, for the Kapha, we call it as empty Kapha and damp Kapha. These are the different categories we are making. We are taking the primary VPK and we try to derive it into different energy levels. You might have wondered, what is this guy speaking about? This empty and damp. Let's understand these concepts in detail, and I believe that this is a very, very important diagnosis that we need to do in diagnosing the patient problems. So let's take the first case, empty heat. To understand this better, what I will do is I'll take an example. We'll take an aluminum vessel. We can call it as patra, right? Aluminum vessel. Assume that there's nothing in this aluminum vessel. It's completely empty. And I kept this aluminum vessel on the burning flame. And I started heating this. What happens? The vessel will get heat, correct? And it's still increasing the heat. What happens? It turns black. It's completely black. And even still further heating it. I'm further heating it. Let's say I heat it for almost more than 5 hours and 6 hours. It can change the shape of the vessel. Correct? So that is empty heat. So I'll come back to this empty heat again. So I'll take one more case now. The damp heat. Now I'll take the same aluminum vessel. I'll keep it on the stove. And this time I'll put a water into this. And and the flame is burning. Now what happens? The water starts boiling. Correct? As the water starts boils, the vapor starts coming. We keep our hand exactly on top of this, the vapors coming, right? I'll keep the hand there. And vapors are coming and sticking onto my hand. I can feel the heat, and also there is a water droplets. So that is damp heat. I can feel the heat there, and there is also a dampness. Now correlate this to the human body. Now this vessel is our body, and this fire is our activity, and this water is our rest. To balance this vessel, the activity and the rest means the fire and the water should be balanced. If there is an excess of fire, in case of empty heat, I told you that the fire is too high, it's drying out all the fluids. Correct? And I can say this empty heat, it's not only heat actually, it's a fire actually. And fire can change the shape of any object. Fire can make the structural change. Correct? And definitely, person who is having excess of empty heat is having, the fluid is drying out. His fluids are drying out. He is suffering from hyperactivity. He is aggressive. He is anger. He is irritable. If the empty heat, definitely if it is on the liver, so liver is hyperactive. That means what is the nature of fire? The fire moves upwards. It triggers the thyroid. Definitely the person suffers from hyperthyroid issues. And the fire is moving up. It's making eye burning sensation issues, air fall issues. Correct? And if the same fire resides in the kidney, so kidney controls our bones. Definitely the fluids near the bones will get dry out. The person is end up with joint pain issues, knee pain issues, back pain issues. So the main culprit is the empty heat. Empty heat is a fire actually. Now when it comes to damp heat, I told you damp means there is a wetness, there is a heat, but the intensity of damp heat is minimal compared to the empty heat. When I say damp heat, the dampness is heavy. So when I say heavy, which moves always towards the downwards, which moves towards the gravity. While moving, what it does, it carries this heat and goes towards the down. And definitely, if the damp heat, especially in the kidney and bladder, or its spleen and stomach, the person's problems are always researched in the lower part of the body. It may be food burning sensation issues. It may be varicose vein issues. He may be suffering from knee pain issues. He may be suffering from pelvis pain issues, hip joint pain issues. And these people who have excess of damp heat, they do sweating a lot. They sweat a lot because the body wants to throw out this dampness. And these people are very heavy because of the water retention in the body. So that's the level of diagnosis, detailed level of diagnosis we can do here. And through the graphical representation, you can see that the empty heat. We are representing in the yin and yang theory here. The black one is the yin, the pink one is yang. Empty heat, you can see, observe that the yang is rising up, and the fluids are going down because the yin is called fluids. So fluids are deficient, and the yang is rising up. This is completely an empty heat case. And you might have seen that, many people say that even though I'm having a healthy diet, a quality food, I'm struggling to gain the weight. I'm struggling to gain the weight because the reason is, suppose if the same empty heat comes in the liver. So liver, what is the function of liver? Liver controls our muscular system. Definitely, the fluids in the muscles will get dry out and the person will become so thin. Because to gain the weight, you need a kapha, right? You need a water. But because of this empty heat, empty fire, it's drying out the fluid and making the person so thin. And these guys are really struggle to gain the weight. So that is an empty heat. When it comes to damp heat, and we are clearly representing that there is a yang is rising up, and also there is a yin is rising up. So the black is yin and the pink is yang. It's a dampness and heat. It's a damp heat. And these two guys they sweat a lot because of excess of retention of dampness. And they also easily they gain the weight because of the dampness. So if we move to the next energy level, the Vata, the dryness. So what is the nature of Vata actually? Vata means air. It's momentum. It will not sit in one position, right? The person who has excess of Vata, they will roam here and there. So we categorize this into two different categories. For the time being, I'll call this as empty Vata, means empty dry. And one more case is the damp dry. Let's understand this in detail. What exactly this empty Vata or empty dry, and what is this damp dry? To understand this better, I'll take one more example. After washing our clothes, what we do, we go to the terrace, correct? We'll hang our clothes on the wires, right, to get it dry. To balance this clothes, okay, there should be if the clothes get balanced, there should be a minimal amount of wetness and a minimal amount of dryness to sustain from the external wind. Assume that it's a summer season, the weather is too hot, so too dry, the temperature is too high, and it's a midday afternoon. Now what is happening? The cloths which we kept there, right? They all get dried at first. And then even the hotness increases, the cloths will start folding, correct? It's going to change the shape. It's going to fold like anything. Similarly, in our body, if there is an excess of dryness, our skin will become wrinkles, correct? Have you observed that? So skin will get wrinkles. And the nails will become brittle due to the excess of dryness, and skin starts peeling, especially the white patches on the skin, correct? And many people will suffer from excess of dandruff issues because of excess of dryness, correct? And few people also suffer from constipation issues because of dryness is making the motion hard, and he suffers from constipation, correct? And I have seen many people, especially the people they do smoke, right? Due to this excess of smoking, the lungs will get dry. It's dry out. What happens if there is excess of dryness in the lungs? Lungs will get congested. Correct? You can observe the chest area. The chest area is completely congested due to the excess of dryness. There's no water retention in the lungs. So that is empty dry. So when we look into the other case now, the damp dry, or we can call it as a damp Vata. To understand this better, I'll take the same cloth now. Assume that There is external weather is too rainy, it's too wet, it's too dampness in the external weather. What these cloths will do, they'll absorb the wetness, they'll absorb this water, and they'll become heavy and they're unable to move, correct? What is the nature of Vata? Vata has to move, but due to the excess of dampness retention, they are unable to move. Definitely, people who have excess of damp Vata, or we can call it a damp dry, they feel lazy, they feel lethargy, they feel procrastination. If I ask him to do a work, he will say, I'll do it tomorrow. Correct? And if it is in the liver, especially liver, as I told you that liver controls the muscular system, person feels lazy, person feels lethargy. And one more thing you might have observed, like if the weather is too rainy, right? Nowadays it's almost everywhere it's raining. Think that in early morning the rain started. What we feel actually, we feel to sleep. We'll feel sleepy, we feel lazy, correct? Because the external sunlight is having a direct impact on our Jataragni. So Jataragni plays a very, very important role in our digestive system. If external weather is too damp, it's too rainy, we feel, we feel no hunger at all. Our digestion is poor. In the same way, if the person has excess of damp water, especially in stomach, his digestion is really poor. He is unable to digest the food. So that is all about external, damp water or a damp dryness. So similar to this dryness, we have one more category, is coldness, or is Kapha. So to better understand this Kapha, again we have two different categories here. Empty cold or empty Kapha or a damp Kapha. We call this as damp Kapha. This is for our sake we kept this name, or a damp cold. So to understand this better, when I say damp, Kapha means it's a coldness only. And in the graphical representation, you can see that the pink is going negative. That's completely yang deficiency in both the cases. It's a completely yang is deficient. That means Kapha is excess. And in case of empty Kapha, to understand this better, we'll take a cooler. What is the job of cooler? When we keep a water into the cooler, right? It's make the water cold. It's a coldness, correct? The water is cold. It's a cold water. So water is get cold, but I can see that the water is moving. The water, there is a momentum in the water. Now I'll come to the other case. It's a damp cold or a damp Kapha. This is I can say, the water we kept inside a freezer. So what does the freezer does? It solidifies the water. Correct? It solidifies the water and it forms the ice. So there's excess of dampness retention in the body. And this is a completely chronic case. And this is not today's problem. This is not yesterday's problem. The body has undergone several changes to come and come to this condition. This is completely a chronic condition. And especially the person who suffers from excess of damp cold, especially in the lower part of the body, let's say in the kidney or bladder or in the spleen and stomach, he suffers from weak digestion. His digestion is poor, very, very poor. And I have also seen many women, especially who has excess of damp cold in the spleen and stomach, they end up with PCOD issues and PCOS issues and uterine fibroids, because it's the excess of water retention. It's solidifying, it's forming the lumps in the body, and excess of water retention in the lower part of the body, especially the edema case. So legs start swelling because the water retention is too high. And these guys, they do a frequent urination because body wants to throw out this the excess water retention in the form of urine. They do a frequent urination. So that is damp cold actually. So we discussed about different categories of heat: empty heat and damp heat, empty Vata and damp Vata, and empty Kapha and damp Kapha. So these are the detailed energy levels. These are very, very important, and it's also very important to know how these energy levels play a vital role when it is associated with the organ. So that's very, very important. That's where we can tackle any disease. No matter what problem the patient is suffering, we can exactly speak to the specific to this problem. So once if we got to know the energy levels, the next job is to identify the organ which is imbalanced. To understand this, we dig deep into this holistic science. This TCM and Ayurveda gives a really beautiful theory called 5-element theory in TCM and Panchamahabhuta theory in Ayurveda. And this is really a beautiful theory. And our body is made up of 5 elements or Panchamahabhutas. And the external nature is also made up of Panchamahabhutas. Whatever happens in the nature, the same thing happens in our body also. And these 5 elements, they're nicely correlated with each organ. If you take a wood element, they correlated with liver and gallbladder. If you take the fire element, they correlate with heart and small intestine. If you take the earth element, they correlated with spleen and stomach. If you take the metal element, they correlated with lungs and large intestine. And if you take a water element, they correlate with kidney and bladder. They're nicely correlated this. And this 5-element theory also works with the principle of generation cycle and the control cycle. And this theory is very vast. So we're not going to talk about much about this theory here. But what more important is that how can we identify through the pulse the organ which is imbalanced? So that's very, very important. If we get to know that the imbalanced organ and also the energy associated with that, we can exactly speak about the patient problems. So we have discussed many different energy levels. We have derived 6 energy levels. And we also got to know this 5-element theory, and it speak about the different organs. So if we link this, we can make a detailed diagnosis about the patient body. We can suggest a custom diet plan. We can suggest a custom root cause analysis. We can also suggest a custom lifestyle corrections for a patient. No matter what treatment you practice, if our diagnosis becomes pakka, the treatment really is going to work out. So that is one we are going to discuss in detail, how this organ and the energy associated with that, which helps us for disease diagnosis. So we are representing it in the 5-element graph. We are calling this in the report. This graph is coming actually. We are calling this graph as organ energy levels, organ energy graph, where each organ, imbalanced organ, we show it first. We can see that the green one, it shows liver and gallbladder, organ liver and gallbladder. The yellow one is spleen and stomach. The blue one is kidney and bladder. The pink one is heart and small intestine. And the gray color one is lungs and large intestine. It gives these 5 elements. And out of these 5 elements, according to this example, what I'm observing here is that the spleen and stomach is the one which needs higher attention. That means that where the energy is imbalanced. So we got to know the organ. Now, what is the energy associated with that? Is it a hypo or hyper? That is very important. Now, look at this neighboring graph, neighboring peaks. That the black one is yin and the orange one is yang. That means the yin is going down and the yang is rising up. So this is completely, we can call it's empty heat. As we discussed earlier, this is an empty heat. This is a fire actually, I can say. Now this person is having excess of fire in spleen and stomach. Excess of empty heat, excess of fire in stomach. I can say it's a fire only because the fluids is drying out and the yang is rising like anything. And definitely when he asks the patient problem, he is suffering from excess of acidity issues. And this fire is even moving upwards, is making him mouth ulcers. Is suffering from chest burning sensation issues. He's suffering from air fall issues. Correct? So this is a level of detailed diagnosis we can do if we are able to get this graph. We'll also discuss even further more graphs in the further discussion. How we can address the root cause of any problem if we're able to understand this graph. We'll discuss in detail later. And we have also published a research article on this, how this organ pattern are playing a very important role in pathological predictions. We have published a detailed article in a medical journal. You can go through this. It's open source. It's available in the Google, where we have described this in detail, how these organ patterns are helps in for pathological prediction. And let's discuss about a few organ patterns. This actually, which after taking the pulse, we are going to get this graph in the report. It's very important to understand this report, which graphs, which gives a detailed analysis about the patient body. And in this case, I have taken the first case like a damp vata or a damp dry. In the TCM point of view, I can say the in is excess. There is excess of in. As I told you that in the earlier example, we have kept a cloth, and due to too much rainy condition, the cloths are not moving. I mean, they have absorbed the water. There is excess of dampness in the cloth. They are unable to move. That's an example you have to remember here. Now, look into the first graph where liver and gallbladder is rising, and next to it, the black one, we can call it as in is excess in the liver or liver chi stagnation. We need to look into the function of the liver first. What is the function of a liver? Liver is a chemical factory, and liver stores the blood. Liver is responsible for the muscular momentum, and liver is also responsible for the free momentum for chi or prana in our body. Correct? And liver also nourishes the gynec organs. If you look into the liver meridian, you will get to know exactly what the function of the liver. And if now what this condition is happening here, as I told you that the liver is a chemical factory. That means liver performs a lot of chemical actions. When I say chemical reaction, the chemical reaction will go much faster if there is an excess, if there is a heat into that. Reaction will become faster if there is a heat. If there is no heat, the reaction won't becomes much faster. Correct? In the same way, liver has to metabolize the fat into fatty acids. To convert the fat into fatty acids, what we need is the bile. The bile is very essential to convert the fat into fatty acids. It's a yang energy. There should be yang in the liver so that it converts the fat into fatty acids. If there is an excess of dampness in the liver, excess of I can say the stagnation in the liver, these fats are not converting into fatty acids, and which internally increases the building of the fat in the liver, and finally the person end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver disorder. And this is it has become a common problem in nowadays in younger generation due to excess of dampness, excess of stagnation, irritation in the liver. And as also I told, the liver controls the muscular system. And you can ask this the people who are suffering from fatty liver issues, they also says feeling lazy, feeling lethargy. They always feels to postponing the work, procrastination, because of excess of dampness in the liver. And as I told you, the liver is responsible for the free momentum of chi or prana. If the liver in is excess, liver also controls our gynec organs. The chi is unable to move, or the prana is unable to move to the gynec organs, and finally the women end up with PCOD or PCOS issues, or menstruation problem, the delayed menses. All this problem is due to the excess of dampness in the liver. And if you look into the spleen stomach, now what is the function of spleen and stomach? Spleen and stomach are responsible for transforming and transporting the food to the entire body. That means whatever the food we eat, it has to convert into blood. Correct? The spleen and stomach has a major role there. To convert the rasa to rakta, where we need a jataragni. The agni plays a very, very important role. But in this case, the patient has no agni at all. There is no yang energy. There is excess of dampness retention in the stomach. This person is having poor digestion. He feels no hunger at all. So this is building the toxins, or in Ayurveda we call it as ama, retention of ama, because the undigested food will convert it as a toxin, as stagnation. So Jataragni plays a very, very important role in our digestive system. And this is one of the major cause, especially for the type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes, we call it as insulin resistance diabetes. Correct? The main reason is because of the excess of retention of ama, or the toxins in the body. What happens over the period of time? Let's say there is no Jataragni here. Over the period of the time, if the toxins started building up, what it happens is that this toxins is going to cover our cell membrane and making the cell a kind of a remote cell. And cell has to receive the glucose, cell has to receive the insulin. It has to metabolize the glucose with the help of insulin and release the energy packets. But due to excess of stagnation, excess of dampness retention, the cells are covering with the ama, or a toxin, and the cells are unable to receive the glucose. But the pancreas is producing the insulin, but the glucose, the cells are not receiving the glucose, which indirectly raising the glucose level in the blood and making the patient to suffer from type 2 diabetes or insulin resistant diabetes. The main culprit is there's no Jataragni, the stagnation in the body, excess of stagnation in the body. So that is one of the reasons for type 2 diabetes. And if you look into the kidney and bladder, what is the function of kidney? Kidney is responsible for the water metabolism. If there is an excess of water retention in the kidney, now what happens, especially in the lower part of the body, the person feels swelling, the water retention, and he feel back pain issues, because the kidneys are near to the back pain, the backbone. So they feel the back pain issues and the leg swelling issues. Correct? And even ears are the reflectory organs of the kidney. The person who has excess of kidney coldness, he suffer from tinnitus issues, a ringing sound in the ears. That is due to excess of kapha, or dampness in the kidney. And if you come to the lungs, especially if there is excess of dampness in the lungs, person feel phlegm accumulation, a retention of dampness, accumulation of stagnation in the lungs. And these guys, they feel, especially the people who are suffering from asthma, they feel if there excess of lung dampness asthma due to lung dampness, they feel very uncomfortable during the winter season, because the body already has the dampness in the lungs, and in the external weather, the weather is also dampness. They feel very breathlessness. They feel very uncomfortable to breathe. And if it is in the heart, so what is the function of heart? Heart has to circulate the blood. If there is excess of dampness, the person feel poor circulation, and he feel numbness because the blood is not reaching the destination. So these are the problems we are going to get it if there is an excess of damp water, or in excess, we can call this in TCM point of view, in the body. So if I look into another case now, I'll take one more case, the empty heat case. I told you that empty heat is a fire actually. It's not a heat actually, it's a fire. If it is in liver stores the blood. Correct? And if the liver fire is too high, what is the nature of fire? Fire will dry the fluids, correct? If the fire is intensity of fire is too high, it's going to dry out the fluids. Blood is a fluid. And if it is too much high liver fire, definitely it's going to dry out the fluids, it's going to dry out the blood, and the person may end up with blood deficiency. And especially in the women, the function of liver is very, very important, especially for the women actually. Liver, as I told you, that liver controls our gynec organs. if the excess of fire is there in the liver, what happens? It's make the blood is deficient, and liver is also supplying the menstrual blood to for a menstruation to happen. If there is an excess of fire, it's going to dry out the fluids, it's going to dry out the blood, unable to nourish the gynec organs by supplying the blood, and finally the women end up with PCOD or PCOS issues. And you can see the root cause here, especially if you take the PCOD, right? There are two different cases. Earlier we discussed excess of stagnation in the liver, which is also causing the PCOD. And in this case, excess of fire in the liver is also causing the PCOD. The problem, the complaint is same, but the root cause is completely different. Now for this lady, we need to reduce the yang, we need to reduce the fire, and we need to nourish the yin. And we should supply, we should suggest the food which nourish the blood. Correct? And in the earlier case, we should raise the yang. Because of lack of yang, she is facing the PCOD issues. We should raise the yin, we should clear the stagnation. So that's where the pulse diagnosis plays a major role here. We can understand easily the root cause behind the problem. And in the same stomach, if this empty heat comes, definitely I can say it's a fire. It's a stomach fire. And this guy, his digestion is too fast. He's digesting the food like anything. And you know one thing, this is one of the reason, especially in the chronic case I'm talking about, this is one of the major reason for a person to suffer from type 1 diabetes. Earlier we discussed about type 2 diabetes, and this is this empty heat actually, it's a main culprit for the type 1 diabetes. So because in my in the 7 years journey, we have seen many patients here. At the age of 30, what we do is like, because nowadays everybody is running behind the money, we do a lot of work, correct? We do a lot of work. Let's say at the age of 30, we are doing a lot of work, a mental work and a physical work. That means we're going to office, working from 9 to 7 continuously, and coming to home, and even in the night also we are holding our mobile phones and laptops, watching our movies till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. and again early morning, again we are going there, we are working in the office, we're not giving a rest for our mind and not giving a rest for our body. This, what do you call, your mind is running like a machine. This generates a heat. It's a fire actually. And you know one thing, we call this stomach as a second mind. Whatever it runs in our mind, so it's also triggers our stomach, because there is a connection between our brain and the stomach through a vagus nerve. You might have observed that, person who do a lot of mental activity, they feel also more hunger. So we start eating more and more food, and as soon as the food enters into the stomach will digest the food and releases the glucose. This will happen for the many years. It happens for over many years, and whatever we eat, it's digesting like anything and releasing the glucose. And what the pancreas does, as soon as the glucose comes, the pancreas starts releasing the insulin. It starts releasing the insulin because it has to metabolize the glucose. And the stomach is digesting the food, releasing the glucose, and the pancreas is producing the insulin. And this happens over the period of time. At one point of time, pancreas says, I cannot produce insulin much. I cannot sync up with your face, and it stops producing the insulin. So which in turn rising the glucose level in the blood and making the person to suffer from type 1 diabetes. Especially it's a chronic case, especially a person after the age of 50 or 45 or 50, he may end up the probability is much higher if there is excess of stomach heat of building a type 1 diabetes. And you know one thing, because of this empty heat, this fire is rising. these guys are losing their weight. They lose the weight because the fluids are drying out from the body, because this fire is drying out all the fluids. The person who suffers from type 1 diabetes, they're losing their weight. And during the night, they sweat a lot. Anyone who is sweating during the night, that means the fluids are drying out from the body. The fluids are drying out from the body. And they feel a lot of thirsty. They feel to drink the water every time because the fluids are drying out. So the main culprit is the empty heat. And in case of damp heat, in case of type 2 diabetes, the culprit is stagnation, the ama. Whereas in case of empty heat, the culprit is, in the type 1 diabetes, the culprit is the fire, the empty heat. And if the same empty heat, if it comes on the kidney controls our bones. It's very responsible for building our bone strength. Inside every bone, there is a bone marrow. We call this as majja in Ayurveda. What happens if there is excess of empty heat in the kidney? It's going to dry the fluids. It's going to dry out this majja. And you know one thing, this majja is responsible for nourishing the cells, for nourishing the tissue, especially the brain marrow, the brain tissues. It nourishes the brain tissue. But due to the kidney empty heat, this majja is going to deplete. It's going to deplete the majja, and this in turn lacks the nourishment of brain cells. That's why the people who suffer from excess of kidney empty heat, they suffer from poor memory, especially at the age of 60 plus. They're suffering from kidney empty heat. They have poor memory. They struggle to remember the things. And near the joints, we have a synovial fluids. That fluids very, very responsible for the free movement of our bones, of our joints. And definitely, if this kidney empty heat is higher, it's going to dry out that fluids, and person may end up with arthritis issues, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis. All these are the chronic cases. And even if there is an excess of empty heat in the bladder, people may feel pain wherever the bladder meridian moves. The bladder, we can see in the figure, the bladder meridian starts at the finger, the tip of the finger here, and it still covers the head. Wherever the meridian moves, you will face a problem. It may be a sciatica problem. It may be a back pain problem. It may be a cervical spondylitis problem. Even it may be hair fall issues also. So person who has excess of kidney empty heat, he suffers from hair fall issues. And his mind is running like anything. His mind is completely, I can say, it's a computer. It's not a mind, it's a computer, which does almost all the multitasking due to imbalance in the kidney. And it's the same empty heat if it comes to the lungs. So lungs controls our external defensive mechanism, the skin. If there is an excess of empty heat, so the skin will become red rash, the skin itching, red pimples on the skin, correct? And even if the lungs get too much dried due to excess of empty heat, the lungs will get too much dried and the person may suffer from dry cough. And in this case, the person may also suffer from asthma issues. The two conditions where the person may suffer from asthma. In one is like excess of dampness retention in the lungs or coldness retention in the lungs. The other is like excess of fire in the lungs. Because this fire is making that alveoli, means that the air sacs to get close, because when the air sacs get dried, right, they'll get close, making the person to become breathless. So that is due to excess of dryness or empty heat in the lungs. So I'll take one more organ pattern here, the damp kapha organ pattern. So as I told you, this is a chronic condition. If a person is having excess of coldness in the lower part of the body, for example, excess of damp kapha in kidney and bladder or spleen and stomach, or digestion is too weak, and they have the possibility of formation of swelling in the legs. The legs get swelled, and they may end up with edema. And the body wants to throw out excess of water retention in the form of urine, in the form of sweating. And the same damp cold, if it is in the lung, if it is in the heart, people suffer from poor circulation. It's very hard for a heart to push the blood, because it has to push against to this coldness. The pumping action will be very slow. This is really a chronic condition. So these are the different organ patterns which we can understand, and through this organ pattern we can exactly identify the cause behind the problem. So to understand the to make the report interpretation very easy, because if I give this graph in the PDF, if we give this graph for a patient, they won't understand the things, because the patient, when I say, they don't know ABCD about this, they don't know ABCD about this theory, but they are suffering from the problems. To make the interpretation easy and it's understandable for every common man, what we did is, like, we have added a AI model. We call this as NadiGPT generative AI model. What it does is, like, after taking the pulse, it understands these pulse patterns and generates the report where any common man can understand that. It's similar to ChatGPT. What ChatGPT does is, like, whatever the questions we ask it, right, based on the questions, it's going to answer. In the same way, what this NadiGPT does is, like, after reading the pulse, it's going to generate the report, and this report generation is based on the age of the patient, is based on the gender of the patient, and it's based on the intensity of the problem. Because when I say age, the problem what the 20-year person is facing is different than the problem what the more than 60-year age person is. The problems are different. And again, when I say age, many gynec related issues, especially for the women, are different when compared to the men. So we consider all this into consideration, and it gives the diagnosis information where anybody can understand it. It also makes one more attempt to make a symptoms prediction. It's similar to in the traditional science, our Vaidyas were holding the nadi and they were telling the problem, correct? They were holding the nadi, they were telling, okay, you have excess of lung coldness, you have excess of acidity issues, you have excess of joint pain issues. So in the same way, we have designed and developed the Nadifit in such a way that it automatically predicts the symptoms. And these symptoms, we can select it. We can select exactly the patient is suffering. We can select those symptoms, and based on the symptoms and the Nadi patterns, what Nadifit does is, like, it's going to give a custom diet and a lifestyle correction. And we are also adding one more feature, this is not in the current Nadifit version application what we have in the market. This is the feature which we are going to add it in the upcoming Nadifit application. See, what NadiGPT does is, like, it's going to give possible symptoms the person is suffering due to these pulse patterns. And we have added one more AI model here. What it does is that it picks the exact problem what the patient is suffering, exact problem, and it generates the image based on that. And it also gives the description about each symptom. Suppose if he says air fall, so what is the reason behind that? If he says wheezing, what is the reason behind that? It's going to give a reason behind the cause. So that is one extra feature we added here. in the upcoming Nadifit application, we are going to add this feature, and this gives a complete, looking at for a patient especially. If you're looking at the PDF, right? If you're looking at this image, you get to know, okay, what is my problem? What is the reason behind that? So it's a kind of increasing the patient and doctor relationship management. So next is the wellness tracks. So this is again one more new feature we are adding in the upcoming Nadifit application. Tracks are very, very important because today allopathy is dominated because they have the proof. Before and after the treatment, they show what changes happen in your body. If you take the blood samples, right? Before the treatment, they will say this is what your platelet count, this is what your RBC count, this is what your WBC count. And after the treatment, what are the level of these parameters? They're going to show the proof. So that increases the confidence in the patient. In the same thing, we also believe that we need kind of a wellness tracks here. We need a kind of a tracks where we need to show what is the level of dryness in the body before the treatment and what it went after the treatment. What is the level of heat? What is the level of coldness in the body and before the treatment, and how it has changed after the treatment. This gives a complete picture that whether your treatment is working or not. And it is also easy for the patients to convince, okay, this is where you're going. You're improving, you're not improving. No, your problems are even becoming worse. We'll give a complete picture about the treatment. And one more thing, that let's say a patient comes to you and you recorded a patient details for almost 1 month or 2 months in the span of 3 days or 4 days. We are going to get this entire tracks, correct? Looking at this entire tracks, we can come to a clear picture that what exactly his problem is and what is a chronic problem. If the same pattern continues over a period of 1 month or 1 year or for 2 years, what is the problem is going to end up with that? The chronic problems is going to end up with that, and we can we can take a preventive action. So that is an advantage of wellness tracks here. So this is a new feature which we are adding it in the upcoming application. And to better understand this, we have an example of a woman, a 75-year-old lady who is suffering from chronic asthma. When we took the pulse first time, you can see here, this is the first day we took the pulse, and this bigger one is the recent one. When we took the pulse first time, you can see that there is completely a pitta vata. That means a completely an empty heat. The lung has got dried it. She has got empty heat in the lungs. The lung has got dried it, and she feel a lot of wheezing issues, and she could unable to breathe. So she was feeling very breathlessness, and we started treating. Especially, we tried to treat with acupuncture, and we tried to treat with in the period of 5 sittings, and you can see that they started increasing in the blue line. That means they're rising a dampness, they're rising a kapha. So that's the treatment. We need to pull this in the entire TCM. What it says that, or in the holistic science, it says is that we need to pull the patient in the opposite direction. Suppose he is suffering from excess of dryness, we need to pull it towards the dampness. If he is suffering from excess of dampness, we need to pull him towards because we need to remove the dampness. So you can see this graph that in the first reading, the lungs got too much dry, and as we were treating it was moving towards the dampness. So that is one positive sign which we observed here. And even in the heat graph, you can see that the bottom was excess of empty heat, and after treating it's moving towards the damp heat. She feel some bit of dampness or moistureness in the lungs so that she could breathe easily. So this is the analysis, detailed analysis, which the wellness tracks is going to help us in treating any patient. And as I told you that based on the nadi patterns, based on the symptoms, the GPT is trained in such a way that we train to provide a custom diet plan, a custom lifestyle corrections, and also it suggests the root cause analysis. I mean, what is the reason behind the cause? It gives a detailed analysis, and this data is going to change based on the patient. And the next thing is like we also currently we are recommending a few drugless medicines. We are suggesting Sujok acupuncture point and also the body acupuncture point, and we are working on many drugless remedies, especially in the TCM. If I say color therapy and auricular therapy, and even on the yoga, we are working on that based on the pulse. How can we tackle these root cause of any problem through these drugless medicines? And in case of TCM acupuncture, we are also giving the description about each point. What is the objective of treatment here? I mean, why we need to treat the point, and why only this point? Example, if I say liver 2, why we need to treat only the liver point? And if I say SP6, so what is the importance of this point? So why we need to treat only this point? So that kind of description we give so that for the better understanding for the doctors. And the report in regional language. This is also new feature which we are adding because many customers they were asking actually because many patients they wants to read the report, they wants to understand what is happening in their body if we are able to give it in their local language. So keeping that in mind, so we are also adding a new feature in the application where we are giving an option for after taking the nadi, we are giving an option for a practitioner or a doctor to generate the report in their custom language. So that is the one new feature which we are adding in the upcoming Nadifit application. And the case studies, I want to discuss few case studies with you. We have many case studies. I have taken few case studies here. The first one is a 37-year-old lady. Actually, she is our relative only. She is suffering from excess of chronic indigestion, and her digestion was very poor, and she was unable to digest the food. And this she suffered almost for 1 year actually. And after this, her husband suggested to eat the fruits because they thought that eating banana will improve the digestion. He suggested her to have banana after having the dinner, especially at the night. And she took that almost for 6 months. And finally, she found that they started forming lumps in her body. And she went to allopathy, and they told her to do for the operation. So she went for operation, and she to remove for the lumps. So this is a case study. After when I met her, I took the pulse. So this was our pulse. You see, in the organ level graph, I cannot see. Nowhere I could able to see the Jataragni. Nowhere I could able to see the yang. Nowhere I could able to see the heat. It's completely a stagnation in the spleen and stomach and the lungs and even in the liver. The excess of excess of dampness retention. Since there is no Jataragni, there is no fire, she is unable to digest the food. Whatever she is eating, it's converting into toxin, it's converting into stagnation because the digestion is too weak. And upon that, her husband suggested to heat the banana because see, in maximum almost all the fruits are kapha in nature, they're cold in nature. They'll kill the digestion. So even further increasing the dampness and the toxins, because body wants to throw it out, it formed as a lump. And I have seen, like in many YouTube videos, I have seen many people suggest that drinking milk before going to bed at night will give you a deep sleep. Correct? I have seen many videos like this. It's very important, like who has to drink milk first? the person who has excess of stagnation, dampness in the stomach, if he drinks the milk, definitely is end up with the chronic problem. Definitely is end up with a chronic problem. Because milk is very hard to digest. Then who has to drink milk? If the same person who has excess of empty heat, excess of fire in the stomach, he can drink the milk because of this empty heat is struggling to get the proper sleep. Definitely, if he has the milk, he has the potential to digest that milk and he'll get a good sleep. So it's very important to make the food plan, diet plan. It's very important to check the nadi before making any kind of diet plans or the food plans. And one more case study I want to discuss is that she is our neighbor actually, a 23-year-old lady. She has been frequently feeling unconscious during the menstruation time. So I felt this is really a special case. Then I took a pulse. So this was the pulse. It shows the excess of empty heat in the liver. As I told you that liver stores the blood. So due to the empty heat, it's drying out the blood. It's drying out the yin. The yin is drying out. The fluids are drying out. And yes, definitely because the liver has to supply the menstrual blood during the menstruation. The blood is deficient here and making her to go unconscious. So that is very important. So when it comes to treatment for her, is that we need to reduce the fire, we need to nourish the yin, and we need to suggest the food which improves the blood. And one more case study is my friend actually, is a software engineer. Is working from morning to evening, night to his lifestyle is very bad. He works from morning to evening 7, and during the night time he used to watch movies till 1 a.m. till 2 a.m. He was watching the movies and all. This he carried out for almost for 6 to 7 years. And during this time he was suffering from acidity issues, he was suffering from back pain issues. And at one point of time, he found that there are a lot of stones formed in his kidney. And I met him. Then he told me that, why you are suffering from kidney stone. Then he told me that, bro, I was, holding my urine because I was not going to urination frequently. Even though when there is urgency, I was holding my urine. Because of that, I got the kidney stones, he told. But when I took the pulse, so this was his pulse. The excess of empty heat in the kidney. The fluids are drying out and making the residue and leaving the residue which form the stones. So then I told is to rest the body first, because he's not giving a rest for his body. His day and night is completely overthinking. It's completely, the mind is running like a machine. So this is one of the important case studies. So like this, we have many case studies. So I just selected only few case studies to discuss with you guys. So this is all about the research what we have done, and whatever I explained till now, which we added in Nadifit, which trained in Nadifit for almost 70,000 patient data. And this learning is never going to end. We want to make this machine even more and more accurate. Even we want to solve many kind of chronic problems. And we want to solve the problems. We are not just a pulse diagnosis Nadipariksha device. We don't want to do like that. If any special case comes, we are very excited to take that. It's very challenging for us. And we are clinically validated. And we also follow the ISO and IEC rules, the standard rules in the process of manufacturing this Nadifit. And we have published many research articles, and we are also writing many case studies articles, how the Nadifit playing a very vital role in diagnosing any kind of disease. So, in conclusion, so we discussed First, how we're taking the pulse analysis in Nadifit. We discussed about the VPK dosha analysis. We found that VPK is not sufficient for the detailed diagnosis. And then we went for organ energy level diagnosis, where we discussed about different energy levels. We also discussed about the root cause analysis, how we can address the root cause behind any problem. And the generative AI, so how the AI is playing a major role in understanding, in giving the detailed diagnosis of the patient body. And the symptoms prediction means we have the AI to make to predict the symptoms automatically, and it suggests a custom diet and lifestyle corrections. And currently, we are giving the acupuncture and acupressure and drugless treatment suggestions. And nearby future, we are also adding many drugless treatment recommendations. And we also have an option to generate a NADI report in a PDF format. And the progress tracking, that's very, very important. That wellness tracking, that's the new feature which we are adding that help us that whether the treatment is working or not, whether the patient is curing or not. And the easy report interpretation. So the report interpretation is very easy because any common man can read and understand so what is happening in this body. If you want to discuss more about this Nadifit and even the diagnosis about this, you can discuss. You can take my number. We can have a discussion over a WhatsApp or over a telephone call. Okay, thank you very much.